Welcome to the Introduction to Behavioral Finance. In this video, we will explore key concepts from Duke University's Behavioral Finance course.
Let's dive right in. First up, we have the utility of money. Now, imagine this graph of wealth versus utility. More money usually means more happiness, right? But here's the catch. The happiness we gain from each dollar decreases over time. It's like when you get your first $100 and that makes you feel amazing. But the next $100 doesn't boost your happiness as much. Now, economists like to call this happiness utility, and it's a bit like our happiness thermometer. Now, let's imagine a game. You flip a coin, heads, you win $15. Tails, you leave $5. Now, how do we calculate the expected value? We multiply each of the possible outcomes by the likelihood each outcome will occur, and then we sum up all those values. Then the expected value of this game is $10. Here's where it gets interesting. How much would you be willing to pay to play this game? Here, your willingness to pay shows your utility of happiness from playing. And guess what? Most of us are a bit cautious when it comes to risking our money. We are what economists call risk averse. So even though the expected value is $10, we might not be willing to pay that much due to our aversion to risk. Before we go into why we actually behave in that way, let's dive into omission bias. In this segment, we will explore a fascinating case study from the public health sector. Let's unpack the story of polio epidemics in the 1950s to 1960s. Back then, polio epidemics were rampant, causing paralysis and sometimes even death. Two vaccines emerged, Salk virus vaccine and Sabin vaccine. The Salk vaccine came first using a killed virus, but as you know, it wasn't 100% effective. Then came the Sabin virus, an improved version of the Salk vaccine, which was utilizing a live virus, but it was a bit more effective. Interestingly, despite the Sabin virus's rare risk of causing polio itself, it was recommended over the Salk vaccine. Why? Because the risk of getting polio from the vaccine was much lower than catching it from the community. This decision highlights omission bias, the tendency to favor inaction over action, even if the consequences are worse. Truly interesting how people were more afraid of rare adverse effects of the vaccine than the ongoing risk of polio. But why does this happen? It is rooted in our psychology. We often fear the unknown and feel more responsible for actions than inactions. So in the case of polio vaccines, sticking to the status quo felt much safer, even if it wasn't the most effective choice. And this case study here really shows how our biases can influence crucial decisions, sometimes with unintended consequences. And that's omission bias in action, a reminder that sometimes nothing can be riskier than taking action. But why do we behave this way? It's all about how our brains process gains and losses. And that brings us to our next concept, prospect theory. Prospect theory tells us that we are more upset by losses than we feel great about gains of the same size. It's like winning $100 feels good, but losing $100 feels worse. And here's the kicker. Our decisions are influenced by our reference point, like the price we paid for a stock. So basically, if the stock price goes up, we might sell to lock in our gains. But if it goes down, we might hold on, hoping it will bounce back. And as you can see, this behavior isn't always rational, but it's just how our brains work. And that's the beauty of behavioral finance. It helps us understand why we make the financial decisions, even when they don't seem logical. And that wraps up our introduction to behavioral finance. This was Daeho Lee, and thank you for listening.